All ready to go?
If I have to.
All right. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first Coffee with Candidates event of 2023 for Ward 3 City Council election. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for coming today. You are all my kind of people to want to learn more about what's going on in local government. Thank you, of course, to all the candidates for running for City Council in the first place and for being here today. And of course, I want to thank all of our sponsors. First Interstate Bank, KLJ, Western Security Bank, Phillips 66, Rocky Mountain College, Riverstone Health, PAR Montana, and Century 21 Julie Seedhouse.
Yay.
And of course, I want to thank Billings Association of Realtors for hosting us today. I want to turn it over to Steve Simonson to talk a little bit about what they do here at the BAR.
Thank you, Jeff. So our association covers 29 counties in eastern Montana. If you draw a line from Red Lodge up through Lewistown to Havre, and all points east, that's the territory represented by the Billings Association of Realtors. About 4,000 members overall, a little over 2,000 here, and by the way, we vote. So, Jack, back to you.
Ward 3 is the only city council ward that's going to have a primary this year. All of the other wards only had 2 candidates, so no need. If you live in Ward 3, you'll receive your primary ballot towards the end of this week, maybe early next week. So we wanted to give you an opportunity to get to know some of the candidates before your primary ballots hit your inbox. So first question, we just really want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves to the audience, and we'll go in a little bit of a different order each time. For the first question, I'll start audiences left to right with Councilman Tariki, and we'll just work that way. Please introduce yourself, explain why you want to run for city council, your priorities, your qualifications, your hopes and dreams, just some opening remarks. And we'll have 2 minutes for each question.
Yeah, actually, I think I have more comments than I have seconds. I'm Danny Tariki. I was born and raised here in Montana.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have a question about the speakers. The microphone, we're recording this event for the benefit of anybody who's not able to be here. That's what the microphones are for. We don't have it hooked up to the speakers or anything. Should have clarified that. All right, your 2 minutes will start over.
Okay. Born and raised in Montana, graduated from Great Falls High School, and then got 2 degrees out of Montana State before I went to New York City to try to figure out this mess that we're in. I've always been involved in politics or culture change throughout my entire life. I'm a trained environmental social scientist, which means that data is how I figure things out. When I was in the corporate world, one of the things that I got out of it was what they call root cause analysis. What's the real problem? How do you fix it? Try it. If it doesn't work, start over again. If it works, great, move on to the next problem. And that's one of the main things that I feel that I bring to city council these days is what we used to call in America a shade tree mechanic kind of approach to public policy. I won't even begin to start getting into the list of things that we need to deal with. But at the very bottom line, our biggest problem that's facing us right now is income inequality. We're seeing it really big time in the housing market here right now in Montana, where local people, working class, middle class people, are competing with financial institutions on Wall Street in order to buy themselves a home. And that is going to have long-term consequences, and anything that we can do over the next couple of years to try to slow that down and also to help our middle class and working class be able to afford housing, we need to do it, and we need to do it fast. Do we have 5 seconds? All right, so there you go.
All right. Mr. Kennedy, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, my name is Bill Kennedy. I'm Executive Director of the Family Tree Nurturing Center, former County Commissioner for 24 years, former educator for 12 years, ran the Even Start Literacy Program, running the Family Tree Center, and I went up to the university and was the executive director at the University Foundation, and we raised the money and built the science building. Why am I stepping back in after retiring twice and probably looking at a nice life of retirement? About 6 months ago, looking at close to home, I've lived in our home for 31, almost 32 years. We're right at the corner of Park Hill and 9th Street. Been there a long time. And the one thing we've looked in the neighborhood's always been a great neighborhood. About 3 to 4 blocks away, we had a couple murders within about a month. We had a shooting right after that. We've had 5 armed robberies on the Holiday Station. And so what we've looked at is how are we addressing public safety? We addressed it by doing a mill levy. And thanks to you and the voters in this city, we were able to get more money. But there's a lot more to go on in public safety, and we need to look at that. That was one of my issues. Another was to get back and to be a part of the community. As you see, I've retired twice, and this is an opportunity to come back and help again. I have a lot of experience. Is that 5 seconds? I have a lot of experience I can bring back to the council.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Loveridge.
So this is my second time around. My name is Charlie Loveridge. I'm from Billings, born and raised. I've been very active in the community for about 35 years through coaching. There's one of my old coaches out there, Tom Llewellyn. Through coaching and various different activities, I've probably coached about 1,000 kids in this community. Real proud of that part. But as I was looking at our city council and seeing what's going on in our city, there's some real skewed priorities that I see out there. And right now, as I speak to my constituents, as I walk the streets and talk and hand out stuff and that's my favorite part about running for office, is public safety's number one problem. It's got to be number one priority. And anybody, just like Bill's talking about, anybody who is on city council should always walk in with their number one priority being public safety. No question. The other thing people talk to me about, the homelessness. How are we working on this? What are the things that we are doing? One of our city council members actually gave Bill Cole a letter that said we need to plant trees to promote canopy and cover. Is that the common sense leadership we're looking for? I don't think so. That's not a solution. There's a problem, there's not a solution there. Taxes and assessments. As I walk around talking to folks, fuel's up 34%. Cost of living is up 20%. And every time an assessment or tax runs across the board at city council, they vote with staff. They don't allow staff to do their jobs and be creative and work through the problems. And as I'm talking to the senior citizens, the one thing they all talk about is they can't afford more taxes. That's number 3 on my priority list, but it has to be something we deal with every day because they're starting to have problems paying for their medications, things they need due to the fact that our assessments and taxes are too high. So this is why I said, gosh, I should go do this again.
All right. You both mentioned public safety, and this time we'll start with Mr. Kennedy and work around in the same order. Public safety is still City Council's number one stated priority. What do you believe should be done about public safety in Billings?
The number one priority of the 2022 survey, that was citizen survey that's out there, and it's right on the city's website, is 58% of the people in Billings feel that public safety is their number one issue. They need to feel safe in their homes. They need to feel safe when they're out shopping, and especially in the downtown area. I've heard more folks on the doors that said, we don't like to go downtown. We're harassed, we run into people, things like that. I was chairman of the board for 23 years for the Mental Health Center. We had the hub, and a lot of people said, and the council people said, let's move the hub, let's get rid of it. And when the county commissioners 2 years ago took the money away and we closed the hub, the number one thing is you had a lot of folks with mental illness that were getting help at the hub every day. The riffraff that's on the street is not the same ones that were at the hub. We were able to sit down with transient folks, work with them, and about 2 months we were able to move them into some type of housing and keep working with them at the mental health center. That's an opportunity to be able to help with a lot of the problem that you have. But there is a problem downtown, and it does need to be addressed, and that's an area. Public safety. How do you make people feel safe in their homes? I ask each of you to go to the senior centers and have lunch and strike up a conversation. Most of the seniors don't like to go out after dark, and I even know of a few that pack every time they go out and it's dark out. This is Billings, Montana. It's not New York City. And so we need to address that, and they need to feel safe. I just want to talk about one more issue, and that's an issue of a gentleman across the street from Broadwater School. That gentleman's been parading for the last week with his guns and right across the street before school starts. I have a call in to the chief. I had a call into the police Facebook page, and I talked to the city administrator yesterday because it's a big issue of folks in the district as I'm going door to door.
All right. Mr. Loveridge, same question to you.
So firstly, like I said earlier, we have to prioritize public safety at the city council level. And right now, the majority on city council do not prioritize public safety. I want a place where my kids want to come back to live here. I want a place where people want to come here and start a business. They want to come here and live. 3 things we have to have. We have to have safe streets, good opportunities, and good schools. And we'll start filling the slots that we need for a decent workforce. That's one of our big problems right now, as we all know, the workforce. Firstly, we need to start with better coordination between our judicial bodies. Everyone keeps screaming, we need a bigger jail, we need a bigger jail. We are growing. There's no question that we are growing as a community, and we're going to keep growing every single day. What are we, the second fastest growing city in Montana, from what I recall? So right now we're ranked the 38th most dangerous city in America to live in. 38th. And that's been going on for the last 5 years. And I don't feel like our city council has been doing enough to prevent that and to move towards more officers on the streets, and working with our county commissioners to build a bigger jail. I think that's something that I can bring to the table, and I know Bill can bring to the table, is an ability to work with county commissioners. I have a good relationship with those gentlemen, and I think being able to form a coalition, a stronger coalition than what's there right now, would help a ton towards getting a better jail. We need to encourage churches, schools, and programs to get more involved in families. Domestic violence is the root of the violence that's going on in our community at the youth level. Youth shootings, youth violence is through the roof. So that's something I would like to encourage if I'm elected. Churches, schools, sports programs, to get involved and teach those kids that's not how we do things.
All right. Councilman Trickey?
In 2017, when I was running for the state legislature, I was the only candidate at that time who was saying that public safety in Billings, Montana was a huge problem and it was going to get worse. Yes, it's a big problem. Yes, it's been the city's number one priority for as long as I've been in council and before then. 2 things you need to know. The chief was before the council last night, and for the second year in a row, property crimes and violent crimes in Billings have gone down. We're actually back to the level where we were in 2019. Not a good place to be, absolutely not, but that's back where we are right now. The things that has turned it around were the public safety mill levies. They provided us with enough police officers to be on the streets. And the second thing that it did, which is just starting to take impact right now, is to hire 25 civilians to do jobs that sworn officers had been doing for a long time and were no longer doing. So the number of police officers on the street is actually going to continue to go up as those people get hired. But the real problem is not deterrence, it's not punishment. The real problem is that we've created an environment where we raise people who are not going to initially want to be lawful abiding citizens. Walking in here, I picked up an empty bottle of beer in the parking lot. We need to start spending time and energy on prevention. That's one of the reasons why I was a huge proponent of the prevention dollars that we were talking about that have been in place and we haven't quite figured out what to do. But most simply, I wish we could get a campaign started that sits there and says, hey, let's stop running red lights. You know, we just need to tell people that they need to start being lawful.
All right. For this next question, we're going to start with Mr. Loveridge and then work back around. The other item that's going to be on the ballot this fall underneath your names is going to be a bond issue that the city of Billings approved, $143 million for parks, recreations, and trails developments. Do you support this initiative? Why or why not?
So in this format that it is right now, I do not support it. And I'll tell you why. I know you're all waiting with bated breath. Not really. As I walk around talking to my constituents throughout Ward 3, man, it's about 85% that they cannot understand why we ran it this year. Property taxes are higher. All living costs are higher. Listen, nobody up here loves sports more than I do. And nobody's had a bigger impact on the sports in Billings than I have on this up here at this table. I love it. I absolutely adore seeing those kids out there playing ball, swimming, hockey. That's a great idea. I'm all for it. I'm all for that. However, I think the timing's tough. I think it's a tough time to have it, especially coming off the property tax increase out of Helena. I think that makes it really difficult going forward. So I guess I would like to see this worked on in a different format. I would like to see us piecemeal this a little bit more. I thought Mike Boyette had a good idea about taking it apart and working it through one piece at a time. If we need a pool at South Park and that's our most pressing issue, then let's get that done, and then we move to the next thing. Putting it all in one big bucket. You know, when I was a young man, I worked for my father-in-law, and we had an opportunity to get this gigantic account. And I thought I was going to get it. We're going to make all sorts of money, but we had to stop doing our smaller accounts, right? And he gave me a great lesson. He said, "Hey, Charlie, don't put all your eggs in one basket, because if you lose that, then you're going to be out of business." So we didn't take that account, which now is great because we've had some sort of success because of us or in spite of us. I'm not sure, but we've had some. And with that being said, I feel like we put all of our eggs in one basket with this. I would love to see a rec center built. I just think we need to do it in such a way that we don't devastate people financially, especially the seniors, low income, young couples. They will struggle with this increase.
Mr. Tariki?
Since we've just, in my last campaign 4 years ago, 4 years ago, one of the things I said is we need dedicated funding for parks operation and maintenance, and we need dedicated funding for capital projects to continue to build out and improve our parks. I have a lot of different ideas about how to do that. I have a lot of different beliefs about what the best way to do it is. But to me, the most important part of that process is working with the community to come up with a solution and putting it before the voters to say whether or not they want to do it or not. And to me, that's the biggest problem we have had in Montana and Billings specifically over the last few years, is that we have not had a council that's willing to come up with a proposal and put it in front of the voters. Whether you agree with that specific one or not, that's up to you. But we need to start putting that in front of voters on a regular basis. Back to crime for a moment. One of the things that slows down crime is kids being involved in recreation and projects. It helps socialize them and it gives them something to do. So we need 24 hour, 365 day a year solutions to recreation, and being outside and skiing and stuff like that's great for some people, but a lot of people can't afford to send their kids skiing, and they need indoor recreational opportunities here and now. I grew up a Kennedy Democrat, and I totally believe that we need to be investing in the future. So how we do it, I'm not totally sure. Will it pass? I have no idea. Should it pass? I think we should pass it.
Mr. Kennedy.
Great project. Great project to go forward. It's up to the voters to decide. If it were up to the voters in our district, as I've been going door to door, it's losing pretty heavily in the door-to-door when I talk to people. I'll tell you some of the reasons why. Number one, I've been to 3 different meetings. And at those 3 different meetings, one person told us it was 141 million. One person told us it was 143 million. Another one said it's 141, but it's actually $12 million less. We had someone from the parks tell us that if we did the bond issue, then we just do it in pieces when we needed the money. Anybody that knows bonding knows that you don't do it that way. And you go for the best bang for the buck on the best interest rates. So part of it is, with this issue, is you need to get the facts out. I talked to the city manager yesterday, and I said, please get everybody on the same page. If you're going to have it go out there and you want people to support something, you better have the right information out there in front of them. And that's what I've been hearing on the doors. I just want to go back to one thing, and you had asked the question why I ran. A year ago, South Park Pool was closed 2 weeks before school started. I keep on hearing a lot of people say, we need to keep our kids busy. We started the South Park Task Force. I've been going to their meetings. We started calling council people. We didn't get any responses. They needed a piece on the pump to keep it going. Instead, they said 2 weeks before school starts, so we're going to just close it. They closed it. You had 2 weeks before school started and no pool. Nothing at the South Park area. I mean, we should have done everything we could to help with that. If you're really concerned on children and keeping them busy, make sure the pool is open.
All right, I want to ask one more question, and then I'll open it up to questions from the audience. So be thinking about what you most want to ask these candidates. We'll start with Councilman Chiriki this time. A little bit of context for the audience. Local governments rely very heavily on property taxes. Most of your income taxes go to the state. And then, of course, as we all know, in Montana, there is no sales tax option. So, Councilman Chiriki, what are your feelings about the tax structure for local governments and education?
You got a week? Bottom line, the way we're doing property taxes right now is a scam on residents. It's a scam on homeowners. One of the rebate that just came out on property tax is the exact same size as the cuts to corporate property taxes that are happening right now. And that revenue is not being replaced. It's being replaced by the taxpayers, by the property taxpayers. that's just one example of how the system is currently being skewed in a way that makes it harder and harder and harder for local government to do its job. What do I think we should replace that with? Honestly, I think just about anything. I would support anything that would give the city of Billings independent sources of revenue that gave us a more rounded source of different types of revenue, including owning buildings and leasing them out to people. We need to be really, really, really creative about how we do it. But most importantly, we need to be sending legislators to the state who are willing to look at the tax system and how it's impacting the middle class and the working class and actually do something about that. And shifting property taxes from corporations to residential is not one of those things. I have no idea how much time I have left, so I'm not going to start another rant. But we need to fix it. One other fact: the roads that we have here in Billings, only 25% of them are paid and maintained by the gas tax. Everything else there is either coming from ratepayers or taxpayers. That needs to be fixed.
We'll start working backwards, so we'll loop back around to Mr. Loveridge.
That doesn't make sense. It's him. Plus, he was a Kennedy Democrat.
No relation, right?
That's how young he is. That's awesome. Kennedy Democrat. If you're talking about a local option tax, listen, here we all know in Montana, the third rail of politics is sales tax. We all know this. I would be okay with it with the local option tax if we abolished state income taxes. We'd have to abolish them though. Okay, so here's what I'm scared of. If we don't abolish those taxes and they can't come after us again, bureaucrats, politicians and whatnot, if we put them at, let's say we put them at 1%, just theoretically speaking, then next legislature, we can move it up to 1.75%, but still have our sales tax. Then the next legislature, we're going to move it up to 2.25%. Pretty soon we're going to be right back where we are right now. We have the same amount of income taxes and the same amount of and putting sales tax on top of that. So here's one thing I believe. I believe that residential property tax puts pennies in the bucket. I believe corporate buildings and corporate businesses put dollars in the bucket. So with that being said, if we want to improve how much money we have, then we need to attract more businesses and more entrepreneurs to come to Billings and improve our tax base. That's what I would encourage.
Mr. Kennedy?
I think I've listened to these things for 35 years. Been to the legislature, saw it all. If Tom Llewellyn were up here talking, he'd say, back in the time of Governor Tim Babcock, we tried to get a sales tax through back in 1969. All of these things are options, but I want to focus on one thing. It's not brand new that the valuation, it goes up every 2 years. Actually, Tom, you remember when we changed it from a 7-year cycle to a 2-year cycle. The 7-year cycle was, you almost wanted to jump out of the 4th floor of the courthouse because you got so many calls from people complaining that their property taxes went up so high. We got the legislature to change it to every 2 years. Every once in a while, the legislature turns around and plays around with the valuation as it goes. But the number one thing is every local government has an opportunity to help their folks that live in the county or the city. And what they have is, it's called mills. And you have the opportunity where you stop at your base right here. That's what you brought in last year with those mills. It's up here this year. So how are you going to reduce your millage to level it out to help your taxpayers in the county? You have that opportunity as a local government official to do that.
And we do it this year.
Are you? I haven't heard that discussion, so it's going to be an interesting discussion, and I'd like to be there for it. So give me a call when you guys decide to do that. But the one thing that we've had, and we did it with the county so many times, what we've done is, as we looked at it and being able to lower it out, a priority of mine is seniors and seniors staying in their home. It's $25,000 a year that a senior can bring in income to keep their home. That's their income per year. They can then, if they're lower than that, they can get a property tax deduction. If they go above it, they're paying the same fees as everyone else. There is an opportunity for the city council to do something on that. And I just wanted to talk about the valuation going up, and there is an opportunity locally for both the city, the county, and the schools to do something.
All right. I have a couple of other questions that I would like to get to, but most importantly, we want to turn it over to questions from the audience. So once again, we are recording this. We have a wireless microphone that we'll pass around to capture your question from the recording. So who has a question for the candidates?
Obviously, it's going to be concerning housing. The regulations are not being changed. It's making it very difficult. Builders don't want to build inside the city limits because of the regulations that are there. We don't have housing that's being built that people can afford. When you look at the median income of 85 to 125% of the community, at the average, our income in this city is about $62,000 a year. With that known, then we have a problem getting new jobs because we don't have a place to put them. They can't afford $1,600 for a one-bedroom apartment that's being built on the West End. We need to figure out a way to get housing that we can afford within the city. And out of the 311 houses that were built in the city last year, we are way behind. We had 369 built last year in the county. We need 2,000 living units per year. What are we going to do to make things work? And I can give you 100 different ways to do it. I've only created 7,000 lots in this town. Don't ask me if I know how.
All right, we're going to work from audiences right to left, so we'll start with Mr. Loveridge.
So, Tom, I think that's a great question, and I love that question. And one of the things that I see as a businessman for the last 35 years is the more regulations we have on these folks and the more assessments that we pass so that the renters have to pay more for roads and water and garbage, et cetera, et cetera. Let builders build. Let entrepreneurs entrepreneur. Let's let people get out there and build these homes, make their money, and allow these young, my son's 25 years old, he can't buy a house. With the interest rates they are right now, and he makes a pretty darn good living. He does pretty good. He looks at trying to buy a house, and he's like, how do I do this, Dad? Dad, how do I do this? So I agree. We need to lessen the regulations. Let these, I had a building built at my place. Just a small building, not that big, no big deal, in the back to store some of our equipment. I had to put 4 trees in the front. 4 trees cost me $1,500, but that was part of the regulations. Why? Why do I have to do that? So it's the same type of thing. Lower the regulations, let entrepreneurs entrepreneur, and let builders build, and we'll get that fixed. Because those guys, entrepreneurs are going to go out there and they're going to build. If it makes sense to them financially, they're going to build, and people are going to have a place to stay. So we have to allow businesses to be businesses and do what they do, and they will build. If we allow that, they will build it. I promise.
Mr. Kennedy?
I think one of the areas that you need to look at is, I don't know how many people here, and I'm going to ask you a question. How many people went to the, a year ago, the recode to change the codes? How many of you attended the meetings? Anybody? Good. A lot of you did. There were a lot of changes that went through. I hear a lot of people saying that They wanted more changes to it, and it passed through. I think you need to relook at the codes and see where the problems are. Number one, Tom, on low-income housing, we have some lots on the south side, quite a few lots that the city owns. That's a perfect opportunity to have someone come in and be able to acquire that property and some incentives to be able to do some low-income housing. Right across the street from Taft School right now, we have 2 lots right over there. It'd be great if I had some of our folks being able to get some affordable housing right there on the south side. If we're going to infill, let's come down. We have a lot of lots on the south side that would be a great opportunity, and build in that area would be a great thing. We need to incentivize people for coming in, and we need to make sure that the codes make some common sense. Because if they don't, if you're just passing things through to create more revenue for the department or whatever, it doesn't make sense. So I would say we need to take a look at it, see what happens, and make some changes.
Councilman Tricky.
This is a 3-week conversation. So there's a couple of different initiatives that are underway right now by council to help us deal with this. One of them is that we started a strategic housing project 2 years ago, which involves members of the community, organizations in the community, and the public agencies in order to look at what our strategy needs to be in the market going forward. Having mentioned the market, I just want to say that Recode actually brought our coding standards into sync with what was going on in development currently. Are there things that can be improved? Actually, people on all 5 of that sides of that conversation would say yes and pull it off into different directions. Recode was a 2-year process where community had input into it, and we came out with what I think is probably the best that our community could come up with at that time. Are we going to continue to make changes to it? Absolutely. The real problem, though, is capital. And the question is, whose capital? Who has the capital? The reason your assessments went up this year is because 20% of the housing that was bought in 21 was institutionally funded. We are competing against Wall Street for housing here. And how we deal with that is going to be incredibly, incredibly difficult to do. But that's where those cash right off the bat offers came from. And that is what changed the valuation of our marketplace right now. The last thing I do want to say is that I've just started working with a couple of people to start doing a series of talks about housing, from developers to real estate people to tenants. Everybody get in there and start finding out more about it. I have realized it's an incredibly complex bureaucracy, and there are so many different parts to it, and nobody knows what all the different parts are. So I think that's a really important initiative to move forward.
All right. Any other questions from the audience?
Follow up one thing. In 2008, we had a committee in the city council that
Put forth several ideas according to what needed to be done. And I'll tell you right now, they weren't done, period. That's the problem. City, county, state does not follow through. They give you, the taxpayer, good lip service, but they don't follow through. And I have a copy of the 2008 study, and if anybody wants it, I'll give it to them. I was on the committee.
Oh, we need to move on to another question. Anybody else have a question for me?
Hey guys, Dave Goodridge Real Estate. Billings is certainly a growing community. It's doing it organically as I've grown up here with somewhat minimal, in my opinion, incentives. So my question, I have 2 parts to this question. As we're growing, one, who do you think is applying vision to our community as far as city council and staff goes? Is it the bureaucracy, or is it who is sitting up at the council seats and our mayor? Second question that can tie into that is, how aware are you of next year's 10-year local government review that will require the citizens to vote on whether or not we want to have a review of our local government, both city and county? Yeah.
All right, we'll start with Mr. Kennedy. Who is applying vision at the city, and your thoughts on the 10-year charter review?
Definitely staff. I think a lot of what we've been seeing has been staff-driven. I think you get some input from the council. I think the council input has been a lot just right at the council level, but I think staff does a lot of it. If you look at the legislature, it's the staff drives a lot of it. So yes, I think you need to look at where the vision's going. You need to, the council needs to be in charge of the direction the city of Billings is going to go. Number two, the study commission. I wholeheartedly support the study commission. It needs to be looked at. There needs to be changes. You've got a charter that needs some changes and updating. Tom Llewellyn and I have talked about study commissions since 1990 when I was on the county commission. We've met many times, and I hear through rumblings that we should change the commission, the county commission. We had those, we've tried to go to the voters on that. I think the city council charter needs to be looked at. I think there needs to be some in-depth, and we need to look and see how the city is running and how much do you want the mayor and the council's influence on the city. I think you probably want it a little bit more than what it is now.
Councilman Trigi?
Everything is a bureaucracy. If you stop and you look at the system of how we build housing, everything in that system is a bureaucracy. There are good things and bad things about that, but at the bottom line, if you don't learn how to survive and act in a bureaucracy, you're not going to survive in America today. That's just the way it is. I was actually incredibly surprised by the quality of the staff. I thought I was going to have to fight council and staff in order to make stuff happen and move forward. The fact that we got gold certification for LEED as a city is amazing to me, and that's all because of the staff that we've had in place for decades now. And if the council supports them, and sometimes we do, with their ideas and the initiatives that they want to have, that's how those types of things happen. It's been happening a lot faster on the ratepayer side than it is on the taxpayer side. I think there's some pretty obvious reasons for that, but yeah, you can't say it's one or the other. It's the way that system is designed to work. And we can one of the things that I want to see us do to try to make that change is the cost of services model. You know, we need solid data behind what's going on with all of that type of stuff. And for the second question, yes, I agree with Thomas Jefferson. You need a revolutionary generation. So yeah, I think we should seriously look at it. At both forms of government that we're dealing with here, the city and the county. You actually have two examples of the opposite forms of government there. One where executive and policy is in one place, and one where policy impacts the executive. And personally, I prefer the latter, the latter, not the former.
Mr. Leverage?
So I absolutely think the charter should be, we need to look at the charter. There's a few things there that I'm concerned about. What I would like to see them look at is have one council person per ward and make them smaller wards and have 8 wards. I think that would be a way better way to do business. I also would love to see them build some offices for our city council people and our mayor. Now, they're not going to, when I'm told, which I think is silly, because how do you do business if you don't have somewhere to go do business? I would like to see our mayor have more power. If we can have a governor that can run a state or a president that can run a country, we can certainly have a mayor that runs the city. I think part-time, I think in 1970, in the 70s when the charter was put together, when I was 10 or whatever it was back then, we had 57,000 people. You weren't 10. I like Bill. I saw your signs, they say that. Anyhow, now we've got 120,000 people. We're a different city. We're a completely different town, right? Everything's different. So I think we need to have, I think part-time politicians, it doesn't work anymore. And I think we definitely need to move forward with that. There's no question at all that needs to happen. The only thing I'm concerned about is if we open that up, the tax lovers of the world are gonna go, hey, let's raise the mills, let's raise the mills, let's raise the mills. I'm gonna be against that. I'm gonna be against raising the mills. I think we can be more efficient at the city level. What was the first question?
Just applying vision at the city.
The staff. I mean, that's so easy. You watch it. It's the staff. They vote for the staff. So here's my idea with that. That's fine. You can vote with the staff. But one thing, we have professionals that work there. We have people that are really good at their jobs, but we're not challenging them. As an employer, I challenge my employees to make us better and more efficient and grow the business, right? That's what I do. I would do the same thing with staff. They take more time. I'm gonna take a little bit of time this time too. So let's challenge those guys. Let's challenge the people at the staff, the magical staff. Let's challenge them to be more efficient so that we're not always passing higher assessments on our seniors and on our young people, as well as the property owners. I think that's how we make Billings more efficient and better going forward.
All right, I think we have time for one more question from the audience before we turn it over to closing remarks.
Good morning, Dan Wagner Real Estate. One question that really concerns me, we've talked this morning about assessments, and mainly tax assessments, but my concern is the water costs that are actually affecting our community. With all the subdivisions and stuff that are growing, which I do agree with, development of more subdivisions as a realtor, my concern is the cost of pulling that water out of the river. So where do we get a developed plan to help keep things of cost, I should say, of that expense to our community?
All right, Mr. Kennedy.
Dan, you remember when years ago with Tom Llewellyn, we got together and we looked at between Laurel and Billings and teaming up with the city of Laurel and the city of Billings and the county and building a water plant. Hopefully that reality, water and sewer, is something that will go forward. I think it should be a top priority. It's something that you have. Crystal Springs down there has their own. They had some problems a few years back by doing their own system. People are incorporating that cost into that subdivision going, we need to put some dollars in, some infrastructure dollars into getting that built, the sewer and the water and everything for expansion. And I just want to say one thing. I support the tax increment financing districts, and we wanted those around. We went to the legislature on it, and they are a perfect tool for our local government. Thank you. I got that in. I knew what you were going to ask.
Mr. Turkey.
What's the TIF? I ain't going anywhere near that one. The good news is it's happening. We have already started laying pipe into the reservoir out on the west end, to a new reservoir on the west end, which I personally believe should be named for Willard Frazier, but that's a different conversation. The water treatment plant that will be placed there next to that reservoir will literally double our water processing capability, freshwater processing capability. The next big step after that is getting water up to the heights, and putting that reservoir there is actually getting us halfway there. But yeah, that whole set of infrastructure is in the plans and in the works. and happening. The biggest question we have right now actually about that reservoir is where we're going to get the money in order to turn that lake into a park, and that's one of the projects that's the $143 million is going to fund.
Mr. Lover?
So one of the things that concerns me, Dan, is exactly what you're saying. Once again, as I'm walking houses, as I'm talking to my constituents, the seniors, they're worried about these increases, these assessments that just keep coming. I don't think the reservoir is going to lower our prices any. I don't think that's going to lower our prices one darn bit. And you know what our city council never does? Lowers assessments. I've never seen that happen. It would be amazing. So I would like to see, once again, our staff looking at that, going, how do we become more efficient? How do we lower these prices, or at least keep them, freeze them, so we don't continually raise them every single year as they do. I think that's a super important thing to look forward to with a change in city council. Is some people that actually look at this as big, serious decisions for the customer, right? The customer is the people, and they forget sometimes on city council that they have a customer out there. It's pretty important to take care of your customer, right? But we can't forget that that's their job, to take care of the customer, and that means doing your best not to raise assessments, doing your best to handle streets, doing your best to handle public safety. Keep the basics in line. Water in, water out. That's what we do. That's what they do on city council. So I don't think we'll ever see. They will not lower because of the reservoir. They're going to raise. That's just how it's going to be. I would like to see a city council that fights that thing and tries to find a better mousetrap, as opposed to just raising it on the customers across the board.
All right, so one final question from us, a little bit of closing remarks from each of you. We'll do audiences left to right. So, Mr. Chiriki, as the incumbent, can you point to some of your accomplishments from your first term, and respectfully, why should voters re-elect you?
Please don't.
All right, I'm out of here.
I'd much rather be watching Monday Night Football. I think the major, there's too many to list, so I'll just try to get into. The major thing that I'm working on right now is trying to help reinvigorate the 1,000 Points of Light here in Billings that work on family violence. The Family Violence Center is a huge step in that direction, but it hasn't happened yet. And the organizations that have been working on these things have up to this point, pretty much aged out and needed new blood. And I've helped some of them find some of that new blood. That's something that we have to continue to bang on in a whole bunch of different directions and in a whole bunch of different ways. We are not going to solve violence and crime in this community until we break the family violence cycle. Now I'm caught in a process trying to pick what the next best one to talk about is. I guess one of the things, as somebody who spent a lot of time in corporate America on the data side, I can tell you the reason they work much more efficiently than governments do is because for the last 30 years, they've been investing in information systems that pulls the information from the workers, from the customers, and everybody, and brings it up to a point where you can look at the whole system and figure out what's working, what's not working. That is one of the biggest things that I've been trying to get happen here in Billings. The best example is the police department. Are they using a computer software system to collect information? Yes, they are. Is it compatible with the FBI's system? Absolutely not. Is it compatible with the state or even the county? No, it's not. We need to have professionals who understand process and data, taking a look at our systems and bringing them at least into 2010. I don't think we're going to get anywhere near tomorrow, but 2010 would be good.
So actually, we have two challengers. I'll ask the same question. Can you identify a time over the last 4 years that you would have voted differently than Councilman Chiriki? And respectfully, why should voters choose you? We'll start with Mr. Kennedy.
Over the last 4 years, I have to say One of the areas that I feel that you have a pot of marijuana money. You have, I probably would have, we'd have that in place right now and going forward. I think for the pond issue, reservoir, taking money out of the river, I think we would have had a, going forward, we'd go to Treasure State Endowment and look for a huge grant and going forward. I was, Shiloh Road came about, I was chairman of the Highway Commission. I was also on the County Commission. Senator Baucus brought us an earmark, folks, and we got 44 million to start Shiloh Road. And what did you what happened with it? It's growing out there. What we had is, when I first came on the commission, we had the Shiloh interchange. We were $5 million short. We went to the senator and got that. Conrad Burns, and I used to stop at Conrad's office all the time. Airport Road project. What we did is, I was happy to see that they named it. We probably should name Shiloh Road after Baucus because he brought the money for that. I don't have any problem with that. I didn't have the problem with the earmarks coming in. I understand what people are saying, but I think if the city council would have pushed a little harder this last 4 years, we should have had a local option tax. We pushed it. I pushed it for many, many years. I think the local option tax would help with the infrastructure and help with the property taxes.
All right. Mr. Loveridge, final word to you.
So firstly, I'm not a politician. It's pretty obvious I'm not the politician up here. No question about it. What's that?
You ran twice.
Yeah, I know. Apparently I'm not very good at it. So, so I'm not the I'm a businessman. And what I could bring to the city council is simply this. I could bring common sense from a private sector perspective. And I do believe we need that. We need it desperately on the city council. Danny and I will never agree probably 20% of the time on the things that he's voted for. And I know that, he knows that. I like Danny, he's a good guy, whatever. But we're not gonna agree, we're just cut out a different cloth, and that's okay. And that's just fine with me. You know, he votes, he did his job, I respect him for being there. Pam, you guys do a great job, you're always there, so thanks for your time being on the city council. It's commendable. However, I see us needing a change. I see us having to divert a little bit and have a better understanding of what our constituents need. And what our constituents need right now is a little bit of fiscal common sense. Okay, that's all we need. You know, the city council goes down a rabbit hole all the time on stuff that they shouldn't really be dealing with. You know, let's stick to the basics. Let's do the basics. Water in, water out, public safety, roads. Let's stay there. That's our wheelhouse. Let the state legislature deal with most of that stuff. Okay? The big stuff goes to the state legislature. Let them deal with the certain issues. Okay? We stick to the basics. That's what we should do on city council. And we need to do it fiscally conservatively so that we take care of our customer. And I keep talking about our customer. They know who they are. They're the taxpayers out there. Okay? We can't forget about them. And I think sometimes on city council, I went to one city council meeting one time and they actually said, well, don't worry, we're just gonna pass it on, the gal from Public Works, we're just gonna pass it along to the consumer. I almost threw my shoe at the screen because she wasn't there. I couldn't believe that didn't infuriate people, that they're just raising people's assessments willy-nilly, and they didn't even take it seriously. That needs to be the most serious thing they do, and if they make that decision, that has to be a terribly hard decision to make. And I will not forget who the customer is if I'm elected.
All right, everyone, let's give these candidates a round of applause. Thank you all once again for being here. I want to give another big thank you to our sponsors that you see out on the table tents there. If you look at the back of the table tents, you'll see the schedule for our upcoming Coffee with Candidates events. You scan that QR code, it'll take you to a landing page where you can see all of these events, and that's also where you'll be able to find the recordings of these events once those are available. And thank you all once again for coming.